Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Entrepreneurship Lunch and Learn offered by the Lawrence and Phil Center for Entrepreneurship at Baruch College. I'm Gary Smalls, the program coordinator here at the Phil Center. And the Phil Center for Entrepreneurship is a multifaceted division at Baruch College, offering free services and programs for the entrepreneurial community. Today's Lunch and Learn webinar is presented today by Chris Witherspoon, CEO and founder of PopViewers. PopViewers is a community-based platform that helps you find what to watch next. The platform was designed to give a voice to marginalized communities, to rate entertainment, and to assign those ratings with suggestions, matching what viewers want. So thank you so much for being with us, Chris. Feel free to tell our audience a little bit more about yourself before you start your presentation.
Alrighty. Thank you, Gary, and thank you to all the faculty at Baruch who've made this possible. I'm excited to talk to you, and I think of all the folks I get to talk to in my career, it is students that I think I get the most joy from, because although it was a while ago, I feel like I can still remember being in your shoes, and I try to always keep that creativity and that passion and inspiration that I had from my college years with me now. But more on me, my backstory is that I worked in entertainment for many years as a journalist. I still do that. I still get to go on different shows and talk about entertainment content. But I am now the founder and CEO of a tech company called PopViewers. We right now are in the middle of a big funding round, a lot of great excitement in terms of partners that are involved with PopViewers. And I'm gonna tell you more about PopViewers later. I'm gonna show you a video and everything. But one of the things that I think is so important is, as I talk to you guys about being entrepreneurs, is telling your story. One of the things that I've noticed, especially very early on in my journey, was that every single person who invested in PopViewers, who really helped on the earlier side to get it off the ground, they all said to me the same thing: Chris, I kind of get what you're doing, and I kind of get how this app and this technology platform could be impactful, but I really get you. I really get your story. I really get your journey, and I'm betting on you. I'm writing this check and I'm betting on you. So I want to really encourage you guys to tell your stories. And I'm gonna tell you my story. I'm gonna tell you all of it, a lot of it. And I think that if you learn to bring all of yourself into the room when you do begin pitching, when you do begin taking your ideas out there and telling people about them, it sticks a bit more when they know who you are and how you're attached to this idea, to this vision. So the title of my little presentation, and I'm not going to bore you with slides. I'll show you 3 videos, and bear with me when I show the videos. I'm not the best with tech, believe it or not. But the title of my presentation is Failing Greatly: Eviction, Reinvention, and Oprah. And Oprah, by the way, to me is like the queen of being an entrepreneur. She has done so many things in the industry that she really self-made, that she created on her own. So I'm pretty sure none of you all, maybe I'm wrong, remember where you were July 4th, 1999. I can't see you raise hands, but I'm pretty sure you don't. Some of you probably weren't even born yet. But July 4th is a holiday that I always remember. It is still very near and dear to me. I can remember what I did almost every July 4th since I was like 5 years old. But July 4th, 1999, my family experienced failure like we had never experienced failure before. This was our 3rd time as a family being evicted from a home. We were living in Ohio, in a small town, Warren, Ohio. And this time we only had 3 days to move. So it wasn't just being evicted, but it was like, okay, we got 3 days to pack up our entire house and move. I had just turned 17 years old, and I was getting ready to enter my senior year of high school in Warren, Ohio, Warren G. Harding. And it just so happened to be that particular July 4th, the street we were living on, it was called Hall Street. It seemed like everybody and their mama, everybody that I knew, was driving down the street that day, watching us move. And everybody's like, why are you moving on July 4th? Like, what's going on? Where are you moving to? And we didn't have a place to move this time. We didn't have a backup place that we had found in like the last minute. We were going to be houseless. So I was just lying to all my friends, telling them streets that didn't even exist. We were moving to parts of town that nobody knew. And the reality is we really had nowhere to go. So we spent the next 5 months living in the basements of different relatives, friends, family. We were houseless. And it was something that, looking back, was one of the hardest parts of my life, but it really was a defining moment in my childhood or my adolescence. So in November 1999, after being houseless for about 5 months, my parents had separated. My brother And my mother and I moved into a house we were paying $375 a month for to rent. So you just imagine how bad this house was. It was like the Addams Family meets The Haunting of Hill House. It was a very scary house, but it was what we could afford to live in. And what ended up happening was we got the house and then we went to go get our things that were being held in the U-Haul facility because we didn't have anywhere to put our things. All of our things have been auctioned off. My dad did not pay the U-Haul storage fee. So all of our stuff is gone. So I'm 17 years old. It's November. We just got this house, but I have no things. I have no bed. I have no pictures. I have no trophies from my middle school. I was a trumpet player. I had none of the awards that I had won from playing my trumpet. And I realized that this was a moment where as broken as I was, it was an opportunity for me to invent the Chris Witherspoon that I wanted to be. I realized that I was 17 years old. I was entering to my senior year of high school. I was in my senior year of high school, and I made a conscious choice to get the heck out of Warren, Ohio. I went to a college that was 4 hours away from where I grew up, a place called Athens, Ohio. I wanted to get into NYU or a school here in New York, but I realized the out-of-state tuition I couldn't personally afford, and I was paying for my own college with loans, and I had a little grant and scholarships, but I got into Athens and I got the acceptance letter from the basement of my uncle's house where we were staying at on Palm Mile Road. And it was a moment that really, changed my life. A few months later, in August, I arrived on campus in Athens, Ohio. And this school, the way I can describe it to you, it's like J. Crew, meets like some high-end catalog. Everybody was pretty. Everyone came from really good families in Ohio. Because in Ohio, when you go away to college and you're not living at your parents' house, most times you come from a good background because you can afford the dorm fees or the apartment fees. Me, that was not my story. I knew no one on campus, which was a great thing, 30,000 kids. It was very scary, but it also was like, okay, no one knows my backstory. No one knows what my family went through in our little small town because everyone knew what we had gone through. And essentially, I became obsessed with fitness. I decided that I wanted to major in sports medicine. I don't know why I chose that major because it was pre-med essentially. And you all know that term weed out courses. Sports medicine weeded me right up and out of that major. And pretty much what happened was I was on academic probation my freshman year. I had an awful GPA. It was like the bottom of the barrel. And I was brought in by the scholarship committee who was giving me a partial scholarship. And they said, listen, you have to get your grades up or we're going to take away your scholarship and you got to go, the boot. So I began, looking around on campus for things that I really wanted to do. I got a mentor on campus. It's so important, you guys, to have a mentor, whether you're students right now or when you want to open your business. Mentorship is so important. My mentor, who was not a communications journalism major, she sat me down and she talked to me and just began hearing my story. And she was like, all right, Chris, I know one thing for sure. You really love Oprah. And Oprah is someone who, she went to school for journalism. So I recommend you going and applying to the Scripps School of Communications in Athens, Ohio. And you guys can look it up. Scripps is one of the best colleges of communications in the country, like one of the top 3. And so I walk over there, I mosey on over with my transcript. I walk in and the person who's sitting behind the desk looks at my transcript. So I was going to transfer in from the School of Internal Medicine into Scripps. And she laughs. She was like, Chris, your GPA is so bad. We won't take you. And the transfers that we do take in that are very few and far between, their GPAs are like 4.0 or 3 point something or another. So I walked back over to my mentor, broken and dejected. And again, I'm very used to failure, you guys. I had experienced failure with being a child in my adolescence. So here I am failing again. But I recognized that, okay, there has to be another option. I know how to reinvent myself. I'm going to reinvent myself on this campus. So she was like, Chris, so you can't get into Scripps. Why don't you try going over to the College of Communications? It's really about expressing yourself. There's marketing, there's PR, there's public speaking, all those things. And I said, all right, let me mosey on over. I went over and they took me in, although my GPA was trash. I got in, but I really began to shine. It was public speaking, as I mentioned, and I stood out in my classes as someone who had that gift. And I had a great work ethic. I didn't go out and I didn't party too much. I was always at my classes and focused on opportunities to raise my hand and be seen and be heard. And one day I had a professor who pulled me to the side and said to me, Chris, I want to be a footnote in your story of success. I know you're going to make it to be something big one day. I was 19, 20 years old, but she said, I know you have it in you. Keep going. And no one had ever told me that before. So my junior and senior year, you guys, I worked so hard to finish up early that I had a quarter free my senior year, a quarter where I could do whatever I wanted to do. And I began applying on my little typewriter from my dorm room to get an internship in New York City. I had nowhere to live here. I didn't know anybody. And again, I'm broke. I don't have that kind of money. My little work study job barely put gas in my car, but I ended up getting an internship at Good Morning America in the spring of 2004. That was the year, you guys might recall, maybe you don't, but you might, a year before Diane Sawyer had interviewed Whitney Houston, the Crack is Whack interview, very notorious line. I was obsessed with Diane Sawyer, so I got to intern for Diane Sawyer here in New York City in 2004. My first week working at Good Morning America that spring, Janet Jackson did her comeback concert after the whole Nipplegate incident that happened. And I was just immersed with Hollywood, journalism, all the things that folks had told me I couldn't do. I made happen. I busted my hump and I got to New York City. And I was living in the basement of someone that my mom knew it was a basement that had flooded a few months before. And I had to clean up mold and everything. But I was so determined, you guys, to be in New York City. Just so you know, I think you're some of the luckiest people because you're already here. You're already in New York City, one of the greatest cities for business, for entertainment, pretty much anything you want to do, you can land the best jobs here in New York City. So I wound up going back to OU 6 months later, and I moved to New York City after I graduated. I moved to New York City for good. I got into the NBC Page program, look that up as well. It's a very hard program to get into where you give tours of studios. You end up getting assignments where you can work for Saturday Night Live or the Today Show, Dateline, Meet the Press, etc. And I wound up after the Page program, I did it for a full year. After the Page program, I began working for a guy named Jeff Zucker. I became his executive assistant and he was the CEO of NBC Universal. So that meant he oversaw NBC, MSNBC, CNBC, Bravo, Telemundo, Sci-Fi, Universal Parks, Universal Pictures, Focus Features. I can go on and on and on and on. Working for Jeff was insane because this is the CEO of this company who's making, I can't even say, but millions of dollars per year. And here I am, Black, poor, from a poor side of the tracks, working for him. Little does he know my story, but I was always watching and learning. And Jeff went to Harvard. One of the first things he asked me to do my first week working for him was to throw a breakfast for one of his former classmates from Harvard, who was running for attorney general in San Francisco. He wanted me to have everyone who was anyone come to 30 Rock for this breakfast. So I got Spike Lee, all of the folks who were like in the sort of space of Black entertainment. He did tell me he wanted those kind of folks there. The person had a very unique name, and you guys probably all know who she is. Her name was Kamala Harris. So I threw a breakfast for her. It was incredible. She came over to my desk afterwards. This is 2009, you guys, mind you. So no one knew who she was. But she was running for AG in San Francisco and she wanted to do a little fundraiser here in New York City. I had a really incredible time working for Jeff and I got to rub shoulders with some of the biggest executives in the industry, but I also got to see a lot of up and coming entrepreneurs who were doing things like Hulu. Other companies that NBC News and NBC Universal didn't really see as the next big way folks are going to consume content, but they did sometimes get meetings with my boss, Jeff, and I was always listening. I'll never forget when Jason Kylar, who was the president and founder of Hulu, had a meeting with my boss. None of us in 2010 thought that the way you guys are going to consume content would be streaming. All the network executives and film folks thought we got a lock on network and cable TV and movie theaters. That is how folks would consume content. But there were a few young people who were behind Hulu and other companies like it who had a broader vision of how people can begin consuming content. And guess what? They were right, and the old executives were definitely big time wrong. You know, and sorry for my congestion, I have a little sinus thing going on. But one of the things that I think, you guys, was the biggest gift that working for Jeff Zucker gave me was that Jeff let me watch him fail. He had some major successes during the time that I worked for him, but he also had some really big failures as CEO. And what I learned was he not only gave himself the permission to fail, but he gave himself the permission to fail greatly. On his toughest days, I would watch him go home, you know, 7, 8 p.m. at night, and then come back the next morning like nothing had ever happened. And he would say to me, Chris, who's on my call sheet? And when he said that to me, that was when I knew he was ready to get to work and get to business. In 2011, Comcast acquired NBC Universal from General Electric. And as part of that acquisition, Comcast was bringing in their own CEO, a guy named Steve Burke. So guess what that meant, you guys? That meant that I was getting evicted. We were getting evicted from the executive floor at NBC Universal. And Jeff came over to me and said, Chris, we only have a few weeks to pack up our stuff. And I was like, oh, Jeff, I know how to do this, okay? You don't know, but my family was evicted a lot of times. I know how to pack up in 3 days. I got you. We got this. We're gonna be out. While I was helping Jeff move out of NBC Universal, he ended up helping me get a job at thegrio.com. It was a small startup that NBC News had just acquired. It was an African-American news website. 3 guys had founded the company, and they worked to get NBC Universal to become a partner and then eventually acquire the company. And what's interesting is that I always had a dream, because I used to sit at my desk when I worked for Jeff and I watched Oprah every single day. Every single person I worked for at 4 p.m., Oprah was on TV. And I always had a dream of being a journalist. But again, if you guys recall, I didn't have the journalism experience. I didn't get in the Scripps School of Journalism. So I didn't know how to write a piece. I didn't know how to track copy, do the audio for a piece. I had no idea how to do any of that. But the Grio, with it being a small startup, there were only about 8 of us that were working full time. I was able to really get my hands dirty and get in and learn all the nuances of being a journalist. I went there with the associate editor title, but I was desperate to become an entertainment journalist. And a few months at the Grio, a few months in, a woman named Joy Reid came in, and she really changed my life. And you guys, if you don't know who she is, watch MSNBC, 7 p.m. She has a show Monday through Friday now. Joy came in to be our managing editor. But she was the person who said to me, Chris, I think you have a gift that's beyond just sitting here and being an associate editor, writing pieces. We need to get you on camera. We need to get you covering Hollywood, because that is your sweet spot. And sure enough, it happened. And guess what, y'all? 2 years later, I got to interview Oprah, my mother in my head, the person who inspired my journey in so many ways. I'm gonna play you a clip from when I interviewed her in a few minutes, but I wanna tell you that what we talked about was failure. The interview happened on the red carpet for a limited series she was doing for the Oprah Winfrey Network. The series was called Belief. And so my question for Oprah was, what was her biggest moment of defeat that had impacted her belief system? And, you know, I was thinking in my mind, I kind of know the story here. She had launched a network. Again, Oprah being an entrepreneur, had launched a network. And the network wasn't doing well. The ratings the 2 years before had been really bad. By the time I got to her on the red carpet, she had turned it around. The ratings were picking up because she began focusing on diverse audiences, Black women, minorities. She had shifted to kind of really hone in on this underserved community of viewers, and it was working. I'm gonna play this clip if I can figure out how to share my screen. Wait. I know how to do this. Is it enabled, Gary, to share my screen? Oh, here we go, share screen. Boom. Okay, I'm gonna play this first clip. This is the first clip when I interviewed Oprah.
So this series is called Belief. I watched first episode, absolutely amazing. And I think about you in your career. What's been your biggest moment of defeat that's affected or impacted your belief system?
Well, I wouldn't call it defeat because, you know, I did a graduation speech at 19 1997, saying there's no such thing as failure. And I really don't believe that in failure. I believe that all defeat is a red flag trying to move you in a different direction. So I had some challenging moments in the beginning with building a network, trying to find the audience and where the audience really wanted to be. My friend Tyler Perry came in and helped me. And as I was going through those challenges, I asked myself, what do I really want to say to the world? What is the real reason why I created a network? Why don't I do that? Because that will fuel my heart's desire, my passion, and also create some momentum. Because when you do what you really love, momentum comes from that. So this idea started in the midst of that challenge. So when the producers brought this idea, I literally.
Okay, here we go. I think I'm back now. Can you all see me now still?
Yep, you're good, Chris.
Okay, good. All right, you guys. So that was Oprah talking about what we in the business world call a pivot. So her network was failing, wasn't doing well with ratings. She recognized that in order to save her network, she had to discover really who her base users were. So she brought in Tyler Perry, and they were able to really focus on the African-American community, and OWN became a huge success. Shows like Queen Sugar, a bunch of Tyler Perry shows came in 2012, 2013, and it was huge. So I think, again, it's important to recognize that there really is no such thing as failure. And I want you all to know that as you begin trying to create a company, create a business. Failure is literally something you can learn from that will point you in the direction of where you're meant to go. So I knew what Oprah was saying was true. And those words really stuck with me and got into my DNA that time. Failure is just life pointing you in the direction of where you're meant to be going. And I began to give myself permission to fail greatly. A few years later, you guys, I wound up working as a correspondent for Fandango, who also owns Rotten Tomatoes. And it was while I was interviewing some really big stars like Viola Davis, Denzel Washington, Jordan Peele, Meryl Streep, Tom Hanks. I began to recognize that there was a need for not just, what critics feel about a show or a movie, but something that was going to be able to help impact the sort of sentiment around audiences. How do we create something that really becomes a vehicle for showcasing what audiences feel about a movie or show that lives in one place? With Twitter, it's gone. If it's, after a couple of hours, your sort of sentiment around a show or a movie, but they would have these kind of analytics that were in one place. But before I got to launching PopViewers, I experienced failure again. Within a month left of my contract at Fandango and Rotten Tomatoes, I was told that due to budget cuts, they would not be renewing my contract, AKA I was being evicted again. But I recognized that this was life pointing me in the direction of where I knew I was meant to go. And that was being an entrepreneur. I had no experience of being an entrepreneur. I didn't go to business school like you guys or some of you are doing. I didn't know anything about company valuations or how to raise funds, talking to angel investors, et cetera, et cetera. But we launched this company, you guys, about a year and a half ago, and to date, my team's been able to raise over $1 million in funding. And we plan to do it all over again this month and next month before the holidays. So it's been an incredible journey. And what I've discovered along the way is when I do talk to investors and I do tell them my story, I noticed that a lot of people take notice. They begin to invest in me and the idea that I have. And so I think it's very important that as you guys begin to pitch ideas and continue your journey as entrepreneurs, to know that when you go in the room, you want folks to know who you are. You want folks to know not just the great things you've accomplished, but I think it's important to talk about what you have overcome. Because when you talk about what you've overcome, whether it's I come from a single mom or my parents immigrated here from another country, but we've been able to overcome these obstacles, that shows you have grit. That shows that you have resilience, because I'll promise you one thing, once you do get out here and begin breathing life into your idea, you are going to hit walls. You're going to be told no more times than you're going to be told yes. So it's really being able to shift into that next gear that's going to make or break you. And if you already know how to do that, if you know that you've overcome odds in any way, shape, or form, then bring that into the room with you when you pitch your story or pitch your idea. So I'll play one more clip from Oprah. This is one more interview. It's where she talks about the importance of legacy. And I want you to know that everything you guys are doing right now, it is a part of your legacy. It's a part of your story. And so this was a great moment with her where she talked about how legacy is a part of everything you do. Every day, every class you take, every moment you raise your hand or not, it's a part of your legacy. So I'm gonna show this to you really fast. Then I'm gonna tell you more about PopViewers. Am I impressed with myself? Sharing screens. Look at me. Let me see, share screen. Let's go.
Oprah, you play an unspoken hero in this film in my mind. You know, you're the wife of this man who has this big place in history, but in the real world, you have a huge place in history, what you've accomplished on your own. How do you want to be remembered in history?
What I do every day is try to be, to allow the truth to speak through me and to open people's hearts and to let them see a greater possibility for themselves. That's what I do. That's what I did every day on the Oprah Show. That's what I do in my magazine. That's what I do. And I think the work that you've done speaks for you. I remember when I opened my school in South Africa and I said to Maya Angelou, gee, this will be my legacy. This school's going to be my legacy. And Maya, in her Maya way, said, you have no idea what your legacy will be. Your legacy is what you do every day. Your legacy is every life you've touched, is every person whose life was either moved or not. It's every person you've harmed or helped. That's your legacy. So I don't think about it. I just try to live it.
So we see so many different presidential administrations throughout this film. How do you think that this film will affect the...
Okay, guys. So yeah, your legacy is literally what you live every single day. So where I am right now, I am living out my dream of creating a company that allows people to engage around content. So you can see I've covered entertainment the past 10 years. I've interviewed a lot of different stars, and I recognize that there really is, the viewers oftentimes are an afterthought. When I go on the Today Show or I go on MSNBC, I talk about a film that did really well. I talk about how much money it made, but it's really hard for us to, in the media, dissect what viewers felt. Why did they want to go see this film? Why did they want to watch The Handmaid's Tale or Stranger Things? What are the key themes in this show that resonates with viewers of all types? And also what different demographics feel about a show or a film. So I set out with the idea to create PopViewers. I teamed up with a couple different people who I admired, my former COO of the Griot, also someone that I really admired who was a chief product officer at WebMD and Medscape, a guy named Ben Greenberg. And one of the things that I learned very early on is people want to know who's on your team and why. So I got a great team together. We began building the app. We hired engineers that were overseas. To hire engineers in the US is a lot of money, and oftentimes you burn through a lot of money very quickly. But we hired some folks overseas. We were able to get a prototype built, minimum lovable product launched about a year ago. And we've had a lot of great strides since then. And the app itself, you're able to rate different shows and movies, leave reactions to what you're watching. But we're really feeding into an analytics offering that is going to be something the studios can use to be able to get a better understanding of why people are watching content, what's the sentiment behind content, and the sentiment behind viewers. And one of the things that I recognized 10 years ago as a part of this company is that diverse audiences are what really matters the most to content creators right now. About 10 years ago, when I was working for the Griot, I realized that the conversations that were happening on Twitter, whether it was around people like Trayvon Martin, et cetera, they were micro conversations that began to have macro effects in the newsroom. For the first time, the newsroom was looking at what was happening on Twitter 10 years ago and kind of deciding the agenda for the news. So that was also a big catalyst for me to want to create PopViewers, was that I was watching how entertainment, how people, marginalized communities, people of color, were watching shows on VH1, the Housewives shows, and they'd be trending on Twitter, but critics weren't talking about them. They weren't being nominated for major awards, and there was no way of really quantifying the viewer sentiment. So that was a big reason why I wanted to create PopViewers, was to be able to amplify the voices and the opinions of marginalized communities. If you notice, you watch commercials right now, we're a powerful force right now. Most big brands want to get into the mindset of what diverse audiences are consuming, how diverse audiences are connecting to brands, because we're trendsetters. And what I like to say is that we're in many ways the new majority. So I'll play you a quick sizzle reel on PopViewers. I would love for you guys to ask me any questions, anything at all. I've talked a lot. And then, yeah, we'll wrap this up. So let me get this video going.
In the day, there was little choice in TV viewing with only 4 major networks. But today, there is more content available than ever before, and simply not enough time in the day to find the perfect TV show or movie without asking, what are you watching?
PopViewers.
PopViewers.
PopViewers. PopViewers.
Hi, I'm Chris Witherspoon, founder and CEO of PopViewers. PopViewers is a viewer-powered content discovery platform delivering next-level customer sentiment for brands, content creators, and studios. On the app, we're growing a one-of-a-kind community around TV shows and movies. We allow our users, the audience, to become the critics, recording quick and authentic reactions to what they've just watched, giving the TV show or movie a score, and sharing their media across the platform's network so that you can decide what to watch next. But wait, we're more than just an app. The PopViewers app powers a one-of-a-kind customer sentiment platform where movie studios, networks, streaming platforms, and brands come to understand what consumers are watching and why. We have a proprietary analytics tool where we can dive into over 100 data points where we track consumer sentiment through first, second, and third-party tracking. We've built a solution to take on the industry leaders in the audience insight, data, and analytics reporting space to help drive discovery and create diverse, profitable content that is missing from screens today. And we have a path to 9-figure revenue goals within 5 years. In just 1 year, installs have risen over 175%. And we recently landed partnerships with entertainment mogul Steve Harvey, renowned radio personality Angela Yee, MSNBC host Joy Reid, and NBA athlete Taj Gibson. Together, our partners' reach is 55 million plus. I'm so proud of this innovation, a love letter to the business that I love most and the communities that deserve a seat at the table. So join us as we reimagine media technology and better democratize the industry as we know it today.
You can keep up with all things entertainment by checking out Chris's entertainment app, PopViewers.
All right, you guys, that's my show. That's my spiel. I gave you a lot, probably too much, but I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
Chris, thank you so much. I personally have thousands of questions for you. We can have this conversation for a very long time, but I know we're short on time. So I'll start with the first question. Before you got into PopViewers, the one thing, as I was listening to your story, I heard this running thread of resilience and perseverance.
Yeah.
Right. So my question would be, practically on a day-to-day, what are some of the things that you do to refuel that tank of resilience and perseverance?
That's a great question. I mean, one thing I'll tell you guys, I go see a therapist. Just know that's one of the best things that I learned to do a few years ago. It's a new practice of mine, but I began in 2018, and believe it or not, I was able to launch this company or begin the sort of journey of launching this company in 2019, a year later. So I think that being able to unpack your story, to tap into your personal superpowers, but more importantly, to recognize what are your quote unquote weaknesses and how you can use them to identify your strengths. So looking inward, I try to meditate. And by the way, most CEOs I know do therapy, just so you know. Most CEOs, the Oprahs of the world, most rich people have therapists. So I think it's important to be vulnerable and to embrace vulnerability. And I try and do that as much as I can, whether it's in a pitch meeting I'm having or talking to my team. I lead from a place of inspiration, but also vulnerability.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. And goes right into our next question about the team. So one of the questions is, Could you tell us more about your team and how you managed to fundraise more than $1 million?
Yeah, absolutely. First thing about the team, people think about sometimes when they have an idea and they want to bring someone on their team, I don't have the money to pay them. I didn't either. When you first have an idea and you get an LLC or you get an S Corp, but you can do that for a couple $100 on LegalZoom. That's what I did. What you have is equity. You start out with 100% equity in the company. So what you end up doing is, or what I did was I went to two folks that I admired a whole lot that were leaders in the industry. They had both had successful exits from startups. And I said, okay, I will give you X amount of equity to come on my team. Right now, I have no money to give you, but I have equity. And I believe this idea can be worth X millions of dollars. Right now, that's what I believe. And as we've gone along, it keeps growing. But what you do is you do a deal to give them equity in your company. And the reality is when you have people who are seasoned at what they do, whether it's finance, whether it's they have a tech background and they've done this before, or you have advisors on your team, a couple of them who are former, leaders in a certain fields, it really does help you get the attention of investors. And so the first person that wrote me a check was Joy Reid, who you just saw, the MSNBC host, a really good friend of mine. I went to her in 2019 with the idea of PopViewers. I'd already formed the LLC, and she's the one who said to me, Chris, I'm gonna give you this little small check here. And what you do is you go to 10 other people and get them to match what I've given you, and you use my name. So I would, to answer that question without being too long-winded, make sure you have a great team in place. People will invest in you as a leader, but they also will invest in you because you have a couple of other folks who, although you ain't giving them $1, they've agreed to be on this journey with you. And it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength when you can do a Zoom call or do a pitch meeting and you walk in with a co-founder or someone else on your team who might be able to answer questions that you can't answer.
That's such a great answer, because as I'm thinking about the next question in the queue, it goes right to that, right? So what would be your advice to someone who has a dream, has an idea, but they're so afraid to begin to share with people because they're afraid that someone might take it? So they want to build a team and they have to build a team, but they're too afraid to share the ideas.
You know what? Somebody once told me this in like 2019, and I'm going to be a little vulgar and crass. I was trying to get in front of an investor, and the investor, I had an NDA. You guys know what NDAs are, non-disclosure. It was like a one sheet. And the investor, for whatever reason, just didn't want to sign the NDA. And he told me, Chris, my advice to you is stop using NDAs. That investors, or a lot of folks that invest money, I'm not going to say what he said, but long story short, they don't want to sign NDAs. They think NDAs are BS. And just keep this in mind, you guys. Founders and your vision is unique no matter what your company is. Open up your phone right now and look at how many apps you have on your phone that do the same thing. If you're single like me, you might have Tinder, you might have Bumble, you might have Hinge. They all do the same thing. All those companies raised over $10 million. And there's even more dating apps that exist. But the founders all had a unique vision and little small, tiny things that are your secret sauce that no one else has. Open up my phone, I'm using Uber, I'm using Lyft, I'm using another rideshare app. It doesn't mean that there's only one version of something that can exist. Look at how many sneakers there are. We all buy sneakers. So don't operate from a scarcity mindset, operate from an abundance mindset, and know that there's something unique about you as a founder that no one can take your idea because they can't be you. Right. And once you get that abundance mindset, I promise you, doors will open for you.
That's so good. Because we, especially doing the work that we do and talking with students, sometimes they're afraid to share their ideas.
Yeah. I mean, when you're in the car next, look at how many different cars you see, how many different brands of cars you see. Ford wasn't afraid of putting the Ford on the road. A bunch of other folks came along, but there still are Ford cars. Right. There's dozens of car brands now, if not hundreds, that you're going to see on the road. So there's enough room for all of us in anything that we do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. These questions are just endless right here. So we have, next question is, do you have any marketing advice for a pre-launch startup founder? in terms of acquiring early adopters, also known as customers?
Yeah, I would say if you're a college student right now, you're in the promised land, okay? Young people are early adopters to anything. And when you're in a college, you normally have access to emails, like group emails, group email blasts, you can send things out to. You're able to test your product or test your idea with young people. And oftentimes investors, if you're able to show them, okay, I was able to get 100 people out of 1,000 people, or I was able to get 300 out of 1,000 people to download or use this beauty product. It's a great way of showing a proof of concept. So I think that with marketing, if you have access to friends who have big followings or just kids on your campus, that is a great way to show a proof of concept. I encourage you all to download a podcast called How I Built This. It's an excellent podcast. Listen to an episode. I can't remember her last name, but she's the co-founder or the founder of Bumble. When you hear her story about how she created Bumble, and by the way, she was a former Tinder executive. So she created Bumble knowing full well that Tinder already existed. So she didn't have a scarcity mindset, but she went to a college campus, her old college campus, and went from frat house to sorority to frat house to get folks to download the app. And she gave them all pizza if they did. So just know that getting early adopters is so much easier when you're on a college campus. It's a great way to do it, and lean into whatever communities you come from. If you're Asian American, if you're Latino, go to the neighborhoods that you know where you can reach your community, because if you can show that you can get people that are a part of your community to embrace your product, you'll get investors.
That is so good. It's so many gems in this moment right now. So many. The next question is, so before your story, before you got to PopViewers, you did corporate, right? You worked for someone, right?
Yep.
And I know entrepreneurship is very attractive and it's a sexy word right now, but you did that. And what would you say, or for many of our students who are watching this, they're going to work for someone before they get into their entrepreneurship venture. Mm-hmm. Any tips or any guidance you would provide for them while they're in that space of working for someone?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that people do when they finish college, they rush to get a job that's like a glamorous title. One of the best jobs you guys can get if you want to be entrepreneurs is be an executive assistant. And if you apply to any company right now, name a company you want to work for. If it's the Yankees, I guarantee you, if you go on Indeed, you're going to find assistant jobs for the Yankees, or you want to work for NBC Universal, you're going to find assistant jobs. And oftentimes all they care about is you have a college degree, you know how to book flights, you know how to book cars, you know how to order lunch, and you speak well. At the end of the day, if you want to learn, if you want to be a boss, you want to learn from the best, and you want to learn from bosses. And oftentimes when you work for someone who's an executive, in a couple of years, they're going to say, what do you want to do? And how can I help you do what you want to do? So I think it's a great opportunity to get your feet wet, to learn from how corporate executives work, because just know the future is startups. The future is entrepreneurialism. Every corporate company right now is looking over their shoulders at some startup who's doing something that they're doing and probably doing it a lot more nimble and quickly. But I think it's a great opportunity to learn is learning from executives and being an assistant.
Yeah. And it's, one thing I noticed also is that it's you get to see like a 360-degree view of how the business works.
Yes.
When you're in positions like the executive, you get to see how everything
I mean,
works.
listen, I'll tell you guys, I was 30 years old working as an executive assistant to the CEO of NBC Universal. Most of my friends at that point were like directors. They had like director roles. And it was something that at dinners, people would be like, oh, what do you do? I'm an assistant. But I'm an assistant to one of the most powerful men in Hollywood. Of course, I'm booking his flights. I'm getting him Starbucks. Literally, I would go to Emilio Zegna and go shopping for him sometimes because he needed a tie for an event. But I always had a bigger vision that I'm working for this very powerful man in Hollywood who just with an email can change my life and help me get a job that I want. And also I'm learning from him. I'm watching his wins. I'm watching his failures. And I have access to his Rolodex. When I walked out of that job, I had a 200-page email binder of every contact that he had, because I had to have it at home. And I didn't burn that. I kept that. Okay. If I want to email the CEO of another company, I can do that to this day.
Resourceful.
Very resourceful.
Very resourceful. If there was, and I know it may be challenging to choose one, but if there was one skill that you would suggest or recommend someone to work on, a skill, whether it be sales, communication, what do you think in your career has been one of your most useful skills so far?
Ooh, I think it's a skill and it's also a mantra of how I live my life. So when I was getting ready to go to college, when we were houseless, I went to church one day and it was a big deal. The whole congregation, the pastor said, I got accepted to a high university. I was going to go to Athens. It was a really big deal. First person in my family to go to college. This older lady gave me a big hug and she said, when you go to college, if you don't see the example, if you can't see the example, be the example. So I think one of the best pieces of advice, you guys, is stand out. Don't be afraid of standing out. You know, if you walk into a room and you're Senegalese and everybody in the room is white from Connecticut, pull your chair up to the table and at some point let them know that you are different, because diversity is so important right now. If you're a part of the LGBTQ plus community, say it. Don't be afraid to mention that in one of your meetings, in your interview even, because a lot of executives now and a lot of HR folks recognize that being a woman, being a minority, being someone from an underserved community, having them on the team is so important. So be the example. Even if you don't see anyone like you at the job you want to work at, step up, raise your hand, pull your chair from the wall to the boardroom table. And sometimes just like be an observer, but let them know that you're there and let them know your story. When it feels right, tell your story, interject who you are and where you come from, because I really believe that when people know who you are, they'll bet on you. They'll bet on you.
That is so big. That is so big. That is so huge. Legacy. So we can't finish without legacy, right? So you spoke about legacy and large in part inspired by Oprah's interview about legacy.
Yeah.
When you think about your legacy, what do you want your legacy to be?
Ooh, you know, I think that I want my legacy to be that I was someone who came from humble beginnings, who was able to climb mountains that most folks didn't think he can climb, but that when he got to the mountaintop, he came back down and told everybody what it was like up there. And he tried to bring as many folks up with him. You know, I want to be able to inspire people to know that there's no difference in me and all the folks that I interviewed, the Viola Davises, the Harrison Fords. They're the same type of people as the folks that watch their movies. They're just as insecure, they're just as bruised, just as broken. You know, that there's a oneness that we all share. And if I can be a vessel to help people understand that, I want that to be my legacy.
I think that is beyond a great place to end, Chris.
Listen, I'm fine answering like one or two more questions if folks have them, but just know that I'm here for you guys. If you need any more advice, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll try to respond.
For sure. I'm going to check the chat to see if there's any additional ones. Because this can go. This can go.
I don't know if Mary is, but Mary's cracking me up.
Yes, Mary's going in.
Her reactions are everything. And you guys, download the PopViewers app. It's available in the Apple App Store. Please leave reactions to the shows and movies you're watching. I appreciate you being an early adopter. We have a lot of exciting things happen, like loyalty rewards we're rolling out in a few months. But please download if you have an Apple app phone.
For sure. Absolutely, absolutely. Chris, thank you so much. The chat is still open, but we're gonna wrap. Yeah, we're gonna wrap, but I'll keep the chat going after you officially wrap. So want to thank Chris for being with us, spending time with us and just presenting. We appreciate you being just transparent with us, and thank you all for participating. We look forward to having you for our next one. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email with today's recording. We hope to see you at the next Lunch and Learn on October 19th, which is going to be learning how to keep your entrepreneur sword sharp. Thank you and bye.
All right. Cheers. Bye, you guys.